And welcome back, everyone, to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us as we move into year 4 of Birds 365 with NFL insider John McMullen. And stay connected to JAKIB as we'll bring you some updates and some additional announcements, some information about our draft show coming up on the 25th, and that's where most of the conversation is right now. John, what are the Eagles what are the Eagles going to do with that 22nd pick, assuming they make the 22nd pick, or they use that pick with some of the other draft capital that they have, and suggested potentially they will do. But the one most glaring area of attention is linebacker. Agree or disagree? There we go, John. What do you think? John, do you think we will address the linebacker position with one of our first 3 picks? What do you think, John?
I think it's going to be difficult. Do I think they should? Yes. We all know the Eagles don't value the position off-ball linebacker, so stacked linebacker, all that much. And right now they're set to enter the season with Nakobe Dean and Devin White as the incumbent starters. The one guy I think he would be a fit is Edgerrin Cooper, more from the coverage perspective. That's what the Eagles are going to be looking for. And I think he would be the best fit. Would they make that leap at 50 and 53? I don't think so. And there's a good chance he's not even going to be there at that particular spot. There's some other kids, Trevin Wallace from Kentucky. The problem is they do have that big drop off from 50 and 53 to 120. And you're probably not going to get a Peyton Wilson, a Wallace, a Cooper, certainly not a Cooper. Maybe Jalen Ford. I brought that name up, kid from Texas at 120. I think you're more likely. And by the way, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., I think because of his name locally, obviously, I think a lot of people, and there was some hype on him being a potential day 2 pick. I don't think he's going to be a day 2 pick. I think he might fall into day 3. And who knows, maybe that would excite people to get another Trotter in town. But they're going to count on Nakobe Dean. And
should they count on Nakobe Dean, John?
I don't know how you can. I love the kid. He's smart, but he hasn't proven that he can stay on the field. The best ability is availability, as Chip Kelly used to say, and it's 100% correct. He's got these foot problems. He's got trouble finding the right cleats. And he's undersized. He's tremendously undersized. Now, Devin White, he was a former top 5 pick, obviously, and he didn't play like it in Tampa, but he's got tremendous athleticism. Maybe Vic Fangio can unlock something in there, and that can help him. They're going to take a linebacker. Are they going to take a linebacker in those first 3 picks? I hope so, but my bet would be against it.
On the Eagles side.
Yeah.
Future of Men question for John. Will Kellen Moore try and replicate the 2022 Jalen Hurts offense or improve the 2023 offense? Good question. That's what I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to understand 2022 in totality versus 2023. Essentially, the
2022 offense and the 2023 offense were the same offense.
Same offense.
Yeah, that was part of the problem. As teams adjusted, the Eagles didn't adjust back. Um, so yeah, it's going to be different from both. And again, Nick is always bottom 5, actually bottom 2, sometimes bottom, when it comes to using motion in his offenses. Kellen Moore's always been top 10. So you're going to see more of that eye wash, more motion, try to test or stress the defense in that way. That's going to be probably the biggest difference that's most noticeable. Um, But as I said, they're both 11 personnel guys, so they both want 3 receivers on the field the vast majority of the time, and I'm talking about Nick and Kellen Moore, so that part will be similar. I think you would be crazy to eliminate the +1 aspect of Jalen Hurts' impact on the offense. Um, that part of it, I think, isn't good, and Bob Brookover, um thought it was PM, so that's Bob. So, uh, Bob Brookover thought it was PM, so I apologize. But where was I, Krause? Oh, the offense. Um, yeah, it's gonna be different, and the motion is gonna be the most, obvious to the fan base as far as, um it's all about execution. I hate that. I mean, and I always go back to Jimmy Johnson with the Cowboys. They ran 3 stinking running plays. You know, everybody knew what was coming, and they couldn't stop them because they had the best offensive line, they had the best running back, and everybody knew what was coming. If you watch some NFL film stuff, and last year it was Christian McCaffrey, who was on, I believe, the Manning cast, and he was calling out Eagles plays, um, and people lost their mind. And I said, "Guess what? Christian McCaffrey can call out everybody's plays. Watch, search for Luke Kuechly, the old Carolina linebacker. His entire career, he was calling out everybody's plays in advance." That's how smart he was. That's how, able he was to identify things. If the other team executes, doesn't matter. And you can know what's going on. So it's about execution. I always say, and I've said this to Jody, and I've said it to you over the years many times, whether they know it or not, people do not judge play calls. They judge play results. And I always had this discussion with Doug Peterson. Um, Sometimes players would, you know, make a bad Doug Peterson play call work, and sometimes he had the greatest play call dialed up for a certain situation, and nobody knew it because maybe the left guard missed a block. Nobody knew it was the perfect play call because the execution wasn't there. So, to me, it's more about the teaching during the week and making sure everybody is on the same page. And then the second part where Kellen Moore's brought in answers so-called blitz beaters, and that has to do with the quarterback as well, because I think that was so overemphasized last season. Hot routes. There's not an offense in high school that doesn't have hot routes. And there was this narrative, oh, the Eagles don't have hot routes. Yes, they do. The quarterback and the receiver got to be on the same page, um, and reading the same thing. And that's where the teaching and the execution part of it comes in.
Is Nick Sirianni, John, smart enough to know what he doesn't know and let Kellen Moore call and run and manage this offense start to finish without getting involved?
Yeah, that's a big question. I don't know. It's been my biggest question because for years, and Nick Sirianni, to the point of over, and he has said consistently, as long as I'm here, this is going to be my offense. And all of a sudden, that changed, and it became our offense. In fact, I remember his famous quote when he was talking to us beat guys. He said, "It doesn't matter if Howie calls the plays, Jeffrey, Dom, Big Dom, Joe Kraus, John McMullen, the people on the stream. It's going to be my offense." Well, you know, Nick's also a politician, as I said, and he realized if he walked into Jeffrey Lurie's office after that collapse and wasn't amenable to changing certain things, he probably wouldn't have a job. So that is probably going to be the biggest story of the Philadelphia Eagles 2024 season, how Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore mesh together, because Nick Sirianni is going to want an impact on the offense, and we'll see how much rope Kellen Moore gets. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I mean, I'd give him all the rope he needs. Stand back, put your chest out, and let him do his job. And I've heard you say this many times, the head coach is the CEO of the football.
Yeah, I'd like CEO coaches. I've always liked CEO coaches. And Nick Sirianni has been a CEO coach since year one when he gave up play calling to Shane Steichen. But I will say this about Nick's offense. It was number 3 in the NFL in 2022. It's number 8 last year, I believe. You know, you usually don't fire top 10 offensives. You know, the offensive mind. That's usually not the way you do business. No. Did it look good at the end of the season? No, it did not. I'm not trying to downplay that, but typically over the course of a season, if you have a top 10 offense, you normally don't fire the coordinator or the head coach. In this case, Brian Johnson, Nick Sirianni. But the expectations were so enormous, they overwhelmed that top. You know, it's funny, Krause. They were better last season on third down offense than they were in the Super Bowl season. They were better in fourth down offense than they were in the Super Bowl season. Situational football, which Nick stresses, they were really good at. But the expectations overwhelmed it. You know.
Well, the expectation or the execution? The execution. Right.
Well, if you're better,
situational football means you've executed and you put yourself in a position to make a play. And
well, I'm saying over the course of an entire season, they were better last year in certain aspects offensively. Yeah, the problem last year was defense and turnovers. The Eagles were very good, and even at the end of the 2022 season, they were outrageously good in plus minus early, and even then started regressing to the mean. Last season, they turned the football over way too much. That was the biggest. That was the only difference. Until the collapse really late in the season. Now, when A.J. Brown went down in the Giants game, and obviously wasn't, but they're not the same offense when AJ's not on the field. And you go back to 2021, they had some good, AJ was the key to it all. When you talk about getting over the top, that is the most glaring example of a player who puts you over the top, because everything on that offense falls into place when he's out there. Devonta Smith, great number 2 receiver. Is he great number 1? He's not. Great number 2, following the pace. everything fell into place when they got A.J. Brown. And when they didn't have him in the playoffs, it got ugly again. So for those, be very wary for those who don't want A.J. Brown long term, because he's been, and I say it all the time, he is the best pure football player on the Philadelphia Eagles, and he has been since he got here.
We started the show with conversation about Devonta and should the Eagles or will the Eagles give him a long-term deal and get it done now. How important do you think it is for that to happen, or does it really matter, John? Does it matter if they get it? Does Devonta play differently
No,
if he doesn't sign now? Does it change anything at all in the offense and the chemistry of the offense in the locker room and AJ's psyche? Does it really matter other than the risk, other than, I don't mean to make light of it, the risk of injury would be the one factor I would assume that would be a consideration for Devonta. But other than that, does it matter?
no, I don't think it matters. There's still time. And Devonta knows the Eagles are trying to get something done, so there isn't any concern from that part of it. This is all about Devonta Smith, and if he wants to bet on himself, as I said earlier in the show, if he wants to wait for Justin Jefferson to reset the wide receiver market, which will raise his price and raise everybody's price moving forward, completely up to him. If he wanted to sign a big money extension, the Eagles will sign that document today.
But that document will not be a penny,
Can't go above
more
AJ.
than AJ Brown's.
Can't go above AJ because then you create problems. So, but that's still significant money. $25 million a year. And I see long term, no, you probably can't keep both. And long term, they're probably going to keep Devonta. Is that the right decision? That's why also wide receivers a low key important part of this draft. Not only as the third receiver, they need to upgrade the third receiver position, because I don't think anybody's sitting there saying Paris Campbell's the answer as the third receiver. He might be a little bit better than Quez Watkins, but you still want to get better. But I'm talking long term. So, 50, 53, probably even 22, low key. If somebody like Brian Thomas is there at 22, it wouldn't shock me if the Eagles took him. The other LSU receiver, Malik Neighbors, is going to be a top 10 pick, most likely. Brian Thomas is the other LSU. If he's there at 22, it wouldn't completely shock me if the Eagles, went that direction for long term. And then 50, 53, there's a bunch of guys. Keon Coleman can't run supposedly, but boy, he can play. And that was some of the knocks. If you can get him at 50 or 53 as a potential future, he's 6'3", 213. I'll never compare anybody to AJ, but that could be a potential replacement down the line. Wide receivers under reported need, because it's going to be very difficult to keep AJ and Devonta long term, because they're both going to make. Remember, AJ's already outperformed his $25 million contract, so he's going to want more than that.
Yeah, when does he get that, John? When does that conversation start?
Well, that again, Jefferson, Chase, when they sign, the guys like AJ are going to be up in the 30 million range. And you probably can't keep both. That's just reality.
AJ does what? AJ's new deal, his $100 million deal, is what? Signed through what?
Let me pull that up. he signed that. I think he had the final year. Final year of his deal when they picked him up, but let's see. He is under contract through 2026, and then there's a couple void years. But
So 25 is a holdout year.
yeah, something's going to have to be done before that, and especially when, as I said, Jefferson and Chase are going to reset the market, and AJ's not those guys, but he's right underneath. So if Jefferson gets 33, say, he's going to be a $30 million player.
And in the pyramid, AJ Brown makes Devonta Smith a better number 2. And Devonta is not a number 1.
Well, you saw him as a number 1 now. He's got the potential to get there. Is he got the potential to be a number 1 like AJ Brown is a number 1? I doubt
Well,
that.
I mean, even if you're asking that question and you're the Eagles, you're not going to pay him you're not going to pay him that kind of money if you don't know whether he could do the job or not.
Well, they're going to pay.
Listen, he's a great player. I'm not saying he's not. What
No,
I'm saying is,
this
in the
has
context
nothing.
of how you described it, I'm wondering, does it make sense to sign Devonta Smith? If signing Devonta Smith means you're going to lose AJ Brown, because that's what it sounds like to me. If you sign Devonta, AJ's gone, or he's in a holdout. He's a holdout next year for sure. Whether or not they decide to renegotiate his deal or not.
The problem is, I think there's this disconnect with AJ because of his. I'm trying to be very cautious here because of his personality. Whatever you want to describe it, people think he's. At times, they think he's a troublemaker. He's not. But at times, they think he is because, and he spoke about this in the off season. He wants to win. He's very vocal. He takes his status as a team captain very seriously. He calls people out when he thinks they're not performing at the level they should be performing at. Whether you want to call that high maintenance, whether you want to call it the wide receiver diva, Devontae's not like that. Devontae's just, I'm going to do my job. Head down, do my job. Look, I'm on record, and I'll say it again. AJ Brown is the best pure football player on the Philadelphia Eagles. Would I want to give up AJ Brown? Hell no. You saw this offense pre-AJ Brown. Sometimes they had some good games. Sometimes they had some bad games. They have some good players. They have a great offensive line. They'll have Saquon Barkley. They will not be the same without AJ Brown. You see it with AJ Brown, completely different. He's the final piece of the puzzle. I would keep him at all costs. I don't think the Eagles are of that same mindset.
Back to the question then. Given that statement, if the Eagles don't think that, or they question whether that's true or not, what do you do with Devonta? Do you sign him now, or try and you sign him now? If the Eagles want to sign him, they can sign him. They can put the money in front of him that would get the deal done. That's correct, right? That's true.
And they're trying to. They're trying to because they want to sign him before Jefferson and Chase sign. Because they know,
and that's 25, and that's 25 mil a year.
Well, I
or whatever it is, however it's structured.
Yeah, I think if they would try to get 20 plus. I don't know if they get up to 25. I'm saying they can't go over 25. Absolutely can't. I don't think he's a $25 million player. I think he's a very good player. I think they should be able to get him a little bit cheaper than that, but we'll see. If he wants to bet on himself. Remember, when I say he's not a $25 million player, I say that before Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase have signed their contracts. After they sign them, it might be a different conversation because they're going to raise that market.
Who's better, Devonta Smith or CeeDee Lamb?
CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, Devonta's not. There's if you're talking about top 5 receivers in football, you're probably talking about Jefferson. You're talking about Chase. You're talking about CeeDee Lamb, AJ. Probably missing one or two. Yeah, Devonta's very good, but he's not in that conversation.
Well, then if that's the case, and I'm the Eagles, I'm not signing him. Because to
me,
and I
it's
love
a good idea. It's a good idea to keep good players. He's a very good player.
Very good player, but every action has a reaction. The minute they sign him for whatever that amount ultimately is in the agreement or in the contract, it changes their next move and puts them in a position where they could lose AJ Brown.
Well, and remember, I get caught up in this as well, and sometimes I'm wrong. And one of the chatters brought up that nobody's ever paid 2 receivers $25 million, which is the case. But that also the salary cap has never been higher than it is right now. And it exploded this year, and it's going to continue to explode moving forward because the new TV deals will start to take over. And it's just going up and up and up and up. So there's going to be more ability to pay that kind of money to do different. And the Eagles are often first. So while I doubt it, I won't put it completely out of the question that the Eagles will keep both. They will certainly keep Devonta Smith. If one is going to leave, it's going to be AJ Brown because his price tag is going to be enormous. And who knows what happens? Could be an injury, could be part of the problem when people think he's complaining, he's not complaining. All this comes into the equation, but the price tag is going to be enormous when AJ Brown is up for his next deal.
Do you avoid all of that in the 2024 season, John, by not signing Devonta Smith? Do you avoid all that noise, all that speculation, all of that
No,
assumption?
I don't think
does it factor into it at all or no?
No, I think the Eagles have already identified Devonta as a foundational piece, and they want a deal done as quickly as possible, similar to Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, because they know the earlier you do it, the cheaper it is.
Yeah, but this comes with the ramification of by doing it, you put yourself in a position where you could lose the number one offensive player on your roster.
Well, to those who
you're not going to lose him now, but
no, to those who think Devonta's AJ, no, I disagree with you. It's not an insult to Devonta Smith. It's just, and if the Eagles believe that, they're nuts too. I don't think they believe that, but there are some extenuating circumstances with AJ, fair or unfair. And we've already been through it, just calling up WIP and saying, he's very, probably too sensitive, I would say. He's very honest. And, Fletcher Cox talked about it. You got to have a thick skin to play in Philadelphia. He said it, I think, 3 times during his retirement press conference. So there are some off the field things that they have to deal with AJ that they don't have to deal with Devonta Smith. And I think that factors into it.
Birds 365 with John McMullen, Joe Kraus riding in the chair today. I'll be right back here tomorrow with Johnny Mack, and then stay tuned to the JAKIB YouTube channel for some updates on some programming, our draft information, and our big draft show. We'll have some details about that because it is coming, John. What happens between now, our last thing before we run out of time here, what happens between now over the next 2 weeks? What's happening in Howie's office? Is it what's going on? Is it posturing? Is it reach out? What's he doing?
Most of the draft work is done. You got a few more top 30 visits and local pro day coming up, but most of the heavy lifting is done. Most of the plan is in place. And then it's just about similar to what we were talking about offensively, executing it. And you try to do as much, what you're doing in those final 2 weeks is making the phone calls to other GMs around the league. Hey, would you be willing to move up in this scenario? Would you be willing to move down? A lot of teams are like set. No, we're going to take this guy in this particular position. So you want all those ducks in a row before draft night. So when draft night is there,